All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another weekly networking veg networking YVR special guest introduction here. We have our last weekly meeting in November. Today is November 26th, 2020. And our special guest today has a very, very unique story and a very, very unique offering in the marketplace. We're going to get there shortly and have him tell you all about it. It is about recycling chopsticks, urban harvesting disposable chopsticks as a resource to divert them from the landfill. Another aspect to the business is actually producing in micro factories. Lean manufacturing using locally available resources to minimize environmental footprint. And of course, they create minimalistic designs, beautiful, circular economy products from an innovative, high-performance engineered material. Ladies and gentlemen, help me in welcoming the founder and owner of Chop Value, Felix Böck.
Thank you, Justin. That was such a good introduction. I don't think I've experienced it so on point before. So thanks so much for inviting me. Thanks for having me.
We're thrilled to have you here today, and the majority of our network and support is very, very invested and interested in sustainability from multiple different angles. And so we're thrilled to have you here today, having that conversation from such a creative and unique place in terms of artwork and product. And so, maybe before we get to your current venture, our first conversation starter for you today is, what was your initial spark in terms of your entrepreneurial origin story?
Well, I think, my spark definitely started mainly with a sense of responsibility. I moved to Vancouver around 6.5 years ago with fairly strong values on how I can leave my personal footprint with my career in wood engineering and with my studies in bamboo that I, worked towards my PhD on. And I never took myself too serious on what I could achieve with it, and always approached that career thinking with a lot of fun while doing it, but didn't want to leave out that sense of responsibility, which was that spark of starting Chop Value. Because what I mean by sense of responsibility is I moved to Vancouver, and the first thing you learn about Vancouver, it's a green city. There was like the greenest city action plan and the mountains and the ocean, and everyone seems to be super nice and so happy. But from an engineering perspective, I thought, well, zero waste is kind of a bold statement, and I don't see it. From a just like bitter German efficiency background, I was like, no, I don't see efficiency at all here when I look at the housing market. And the spark was really a mix of frustration and a sense of responsibility that I thought, what if we could start somewhere that is relatable, authentic, and everyone understands that, you can count the chopsticks that you're using and throwing out after these 20 to 30 minutes use. And what if someone would actually take the effort and collecting all of those to create a new viable business to teach about circular economy? That's the whole story. I thought all other problems are way too complex. They're not relatable. You don't have an emotional attachment when I tell you that we are having 400,000 tons of wood waste every single year from demolished construction sites in Vancouver, because you don't have that relationship to 400,000 tons. You don't know what that means. But if I tell you that we are throwing out every single day 100,000 chopsticks just in Vancouver, you're like, what? That's crazy, and we are collecting them now. So Chop Value has developed that microfactory concept where we are collecting around 350,000 chopsticks every single week and turn them into new products. And that's kind of that founding story.
Incredible. Relationship, and you tell somebody, wow, I did that this morning at lunch. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And did I hear you say PhD in bamboo?
Yeah, so that was my academic career that is not the best pickup line, you know, when you go into a restaurant or a bar. But I always said, I always joked, if I ever run out of research material, I can always just start collecting chopsticks. And I think that joke just stuck with me, because most of the chopsticks that we have here in North America are actually bamboo, very, very sustainable and strong resource, and definitely not justifiable to only use for 20 or 30 minutes for your fast sushi dinner. And yeah, it's, you know, it's kind of combining your career expertise with the social impact you can have with your career, that made me start that circular economy franchise business.
Well, there's no doubt about it. Everybody who's with us on the call today and will be listening afterwards, that is likely going to be seeing and hearing a lot more about you and Chop Value in 2021, because this is fascinating and right on trend, which leads us into our next question, which is, in terms of sustainability, it seems like it's always moving. It's fast. It's changing. Everybody, you know, to your point, wants to move towards zero waste, which, you know, very difficult to do. So with all of that being said, what are some trends that you've noticed in your industry?
So, you know, you always got to be careful that you're not listening to the obvious trends that are often greenwashed, right? I think we often, especially I believe that everyone in your network has pretty strong values, and because you stand for something, you kind of found your niche, right? So in the mainstream trends that we see in our industry, sustainability is a fairly greenwash term, right? Like there are companies that I often openly, you know, mention, like Amazon and UPS and McDonald's, that announced these huge sustainability goals, and put a lot of marketing dollars behind it, while we, you know, just do it. And I think the trend that I'm seeing throughout all this noise is there's a lot of more action now than when we started a business 4 years ago. Action meaning it's not just talk, it's not just reports. We do see a very positive movement of very resilient, resource efficient businesses, even throughout a pandemic, that, you know, stay true to their values and they actually do it and implement their new standards and work and educate on what ESG goals means, and talk about openly about these new terminologies that no one really understood 5 years ago. So honestly, our team, we always reflect on the positive to see that there is a path forward, and we align ourselves with these businesses. So positive trend towards a more environmental friendly goal is definitely what we see in the sustainability sector.
Yeah, we can appreciate that for sure, and we'll get to this as our last question or conversation starter at the end. But several of our other special guests have said that portion of act and figure it out, stay true to your values and act and move the needle forward. And that sounds like what you're saying is the trend that you're noticing is people aren't just talking about it anymore, they're actually acting upon it. So that's wonderful to hear. Okay, so Chop Value 4 years ago, fast forward to where we are today, where's Chop Value going in the future?
Yeah, maybe the quick comparison, it started with me and my first intern in my lab, you know, in your university, who is still with me today. And now we have 35 people. We have multiple locations that we call these microfactory franchises. Obviously, you know, had to really rethink what we are best in, and that is being resource efficient throughout 2020. And now we empower people that are either out of a job or want to use this as a fresh start to be, you know, independent and run their own business. And we want to empower people to run their own microfactory franchise under our brand umbrella, starting now. Like we have our first franchise opening December 7th in Calgary. We in the middle of a pandemic, and there's nothing that can stop them. You know, like the smiles on every call from them, working with them through their opening schedule is what keeps us running. So fast forward, I hope every metropolitan city will have an urban harvesting microfactory that can live off the local resources, produce locally with the local talent, and can distribute product and materials locally as well. Just that we can, close that loop. Like the solutions are right in front of us. It just has to be efficiently implemented. And this is what we see our concept do very well as an enabler.
Closing the loop is a nice way to put it, because that's what when I was listening to you, I was just thinking about, very full circle and very community oriented. So that's lovely to hear about where you're going in the future, and especially about Calgary on December 7th. And I must say, if you guys haven't already, the Calgary Vegans page, I'm sure would love this. So if you guys haven't told anybody about what's going on there, that would be a valuable place to post, I'm sure. Okay, you kind of mentioned it in that last little bit there. You talked about empowering people who might want a fresh start or might be out of a job or those. Aside from those support systems that you're offering to people, does Chop Value support any specific charitable organizations?
We have these discussions very frequently within the team where we're like, how do we evaluate on how we give back? And so, there's 1% for the Planet, there are tree planting organizations, there are certifications, or just charitable donations. And what we, in full transparency, kind of discussed within the team is we are setting 5% aside on every sales that we invest into new partnerships to increase our recycling program. That seems a little counterintuitive, because we're obviously a for-profit business, but we need to get to a certain scale where we have the largest impact possible. And we always say, unless we have reached every single restaurant in a metropolitan area and educate them that they can do good by simply starting with a little chopstick, if I give you another example on why I almost compare this to charity, and I hope I get challenged on that. That's totally fine. But in Los Angeles, for instance, we launched our recycling program, and we are in some of these restaurants the very, very, very first recycling bin in there. It's absolutely mind-boggling. The people who mix plastics and papers and compost and cans have all of a sudden, they're learning about waste conversion or recycling through a chopstick program. And it's just like, this is very fulfilling. Like this is why we exist. We want to send that message that every little action counts. So I promise we will continue to reevaluate on how we do our charitable contributions. But right now we want to be in full transparency, investing into reaching as many recycling partners as we can with that 5% that we set aside on every sale we create.
Yeah, absolutely. And in these conversations that we have with our special guests, never any wrong answers. It's fascinating to hear. And yeah, when I think of Chop Value, you mentioned, charities and certifications and things. I'm thinking, oh, Chop Value is like a B Corp certified company, for sure. So that's just what my personal thoughts are. Okay, so given your background from across the globe, maybe you have some different perspectives on our next question, and maybe there's some unique ones that we haven't heard of before, which is, what are some books, podcasts, or apps that you find really valuable as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so that's a funny one, because I actually, like, I have to admit, and that will hurt someone's feelings, because I often get books as a gift. I actually don't read. I think I'm a very my mind is in many different places. So the moment when I pick up a book, there are books like From Good to Great and all these amazing entrepreneurship books that I'm getting gifted, and they look beautiful and colorful, and I'm looking behind me in my shelf, and they still smell fresh and new, because the moment I open this, the first page is okay. The moment I open the second page, I find something that is so relatable that I immediately put the book away and I'm working on the next idea. And it's a problem I have, but that doesn't mean that I'm not reading every single day. So I can give the recommendation that I usually look at the extremes. I look at what is crazy Elon Musk up to, that I kind of bring down to the ground, from space to the ground, literally. But what I can learn from making bold statements and make it more digestible for people, to follow a journey and actually understand the craziness. And then I look at the very, very conservative extreme, which is a very traditional and tired and conservative wood industry. You know, like wood industry in Canada is sawmilling, and the most value add you find here with our most beautiful resource is making some 2x4s and some sawn lumber. Like, honestly, this is, you know, there's a big shift happening here that they have to read the Elon Musk stories to get, you know, these beautiful sawmills in our beautiful forests into a SpaceX story. So I'm usually educating myself of these two extremes to make sure that I'm trying to find the right middle that is relatable, so that we can make circular economy mainstream. And maybe the last like name drop I can do is Simon Sinek, you know, about the why. I think, you know, if you want to be a well-rounded person, and no matter as employee or as employer, entrepreneur or artist, you can't go wrong with his mindset of thinking that I can recommend.
Spot on, absolutely. And this is why I love Canada as far as a you know, multicultural melting pot of experience, life experience, because often when I'm in conversation with folks who were not born here in British Columbia, but have made their way here for whatever the reason might be, and to hear them talk about what a lot of us here who were born may take for granted, and are starting to move away from that and really truly understand, you're right, our most precious resource. You know, of course there's water, but then the wood here that we have right around us, and the forests and everything. And so it's just wonderful to hear yourself speak about beautiful British Columbia in the way that you do. And I'm pretty sure everybody's nodding their head when you're speaking of it as well. So of course you mentioned some entrepreneurs there and industries, but whether local or from back home, are there any other brands or entrepreneurs that you just always find yourself supporting and following and checking in?
So I'm obviously biased on the entire, you know, startup and clean tech space. So I do, you know, I do follow the fellow brands that do good as well, from local to global. You know, there a good friend of mine owns Unbuilders, Adam Cornell. He, you know, he I think he's one of the most hardworking and most incredible visionary in the space of deconstructing homes without waste. And that's obviously, you know, when you look at Chop Value's impact, we can create impact with our story, but not on the environmental level that someone like Adam does. So his job is around 100 times harder and 1,000 times more important than mine. So I follow and be there as much as I can. But then there are also charities or non-for-profits like Repurpose Canada. They do soft deconstruction and you know, pick up goods that other people would dispose on the landfill and try to add value to it, or just simply resell it to collectors and people who just, you know, love thrifting. Even that has impact for us on scale in the urban environment. You know, and then there are brands that I look up to from a truly branding perspective. Mm-hmm. Which is a new realization that I had about me as an entrepreneur over the last 3 years, building our own brand. I follow Allbirds, for instance. Like, Allbirds is a shoe brand. They make wool runners, and they totally got me as consumer. I just love their quality. I love the design. And then there are local shoe brands like Kaskas. You know, they try to bring technology to their shoe brand. They do 3D printed insoles. So I can go on and on, but I think the value of design related to a brand to have impact is really, really attracting. me, to get better every day with our own brand. Because, at the end of the day, we're just garbage people. We collect chopsticks with some soya sauce and wasabi, and we make beautiful home decor. Like, we have to have a strong brand and values to make that work, right?
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, here we are. We're at our last question, last conversation starter, and I'll preface it by saying your humility is remarkable, and the fact that you have your PhD. I'll lead with that because I want you to know that we are truly asking for your opinion. And that is, Felix, do you have any advice for any other entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs, the entrepreneur inside of a company? Do you have any advice for those folks?
So I usually lead with the advice of do more, talk less, or in different words. I think there's it sometimes gets lost in translation, but say more, talk less. It's a challenge I have with many who approach me, and the first thing they say, I am an entrepreneur. How do you do this? I don't think that's the angle I'm looking for. I think I'm looking for the angle of I want to solve this problem. I want to do good in that way in this world. How can I get there? And who can I surround myself with to get there better, more sustainable, and faster, for the greater good? So it's never about yourself, right? It's about you. Even if you get really, really successful with your idea, you need to have that support system around you and ask yourself, how do we benefit from it, and how do we get there? And you have to do it before you talk. It's what I'm realizing many do wrong. Idea, the first mindset is, how do I get money for it? And then no, it's idea, do it, see if it works, get it to a stage where you can represent it and have support around yourself. And then you think, is financing or money an actual tool for growth and impact? That's my advice, but I could be totally wrong. It's just my last 4 years of thinking.
And that's the beautiful thing about talking to different individuals is, in our humble opinion, there is no wrong, there is no right. And that's just fascinating to pick people's brains such as yours. And so you heard it, folks, say more, talk less. And while you were speaking too, in my head, I was picturing somebody typing out an email and it's starting with, Felix, and then backspace, we. I think that's also part of your advice is looking through the lens more of we versus I. So
yeah, and maybe a note, Justin. 2020 is a challenging year for many people, and you can either spiral down or you can climb that spiral up. And I constantly remind myself that I would have not made it through the last 8 months without the strong team around myself. And when you look at the leadership team that we have built around ourselves, 8 out of 10 are female, because they lead with empathy and commitment and loyalty and resilience that you just don't find at your own self person, as a white male thinking you have a crazy idea. So you need to really remind yourself, it's the team around you that carries, not you, it carries your vision to create impact.
Hey, as two males having this conversation with other eyeballs and ears on us, I agree with that 1,000%. I always say behind every great man is a greater woman. And, one of the trends that I've been noticing is the uptick in female leadership roles within mega corporations and even local companies. And I think you are spot on in terms of them having an innate ability, a God-given ability to lead more with empathy and compassion. And we're all for that, for sure. All right. Well, Felix, as we always do with our special guests, we like to leave the floor with you. If there's anything that you'd like to say for those who are with us on the call today or will be watching the replay.
I'm happy to got invited by you guys. I hope that was a little bit helpful and insightful what we do. Yeah, you can reach out anytime for any questions or help.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So everybody listening, you can find Chop Value on the web at chopvalue.com and on Instagram at chopvalue, just the way that it sounds, chopvalue.com and at chopvalue. Thank you so much for being our special guest today, Felix Böck. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
Felix, I have one last question. As you know, I did the story about Chop Value and the Nordstrom launch, and I'm as somebody in the media, I receive the press releases with the finished story, but there's never the story and sort of how it started. Did Chop Value approach Nordstrom, or did Nordstrom come to you to do this collaboration?
As much as I would hope that they would come to us, like on that scale, it doesn't work that way anymore. So what we did is end of March, maybe mid-March, we realized we just lost our biggest contracts, the biggest exposures, the biggest events we were about to launch. So everything was going great, and we lost all of that. So we had to come together as a team and say, okay, let's not get hung up on that. What happened? Let's delete our entire sales pipeline and only put the brands and people on there that are purpose-driven, value-aligned, and that we would like to work with to reach our goals. And on number one was Nordstrom. We know they can position from landfill to luxury. That's kind of our motto with Nordstrom. We knew they just launched a commitment for more sustainable actions, and we knew it wasn't just talk. There was actually some solid data behind that. So we tried out 25 different email addresses for the leadership staff until they got back and introduced us to the right people. That's how the relationship started, and they are absolutely great. They're very collaborative. I really look up to, as a young professional, to the leadership team who are loyal to that company for 30 plus years. I'm so excited that we have the chance to work with them.
So when you mentioned that you basically hit all their email addresses, how did you access those email addresses? Did you approach them through LinkedIn?
No, we just tried, name at Nordstrom in all possible variations and wrote authentic, human emails.
Yeah, that's and that's a guerrilla technique that I think a lot of small businesses do. It's just like that's how I that was a way that I used to do it. Now I sort of do a little bit more LinkedIn lurking, start the relationship there, and then ask them for the email address. But if you've got to go first name dot last name at Nordstrom, then that's the way you get it done.
That's true. 2020 is like, we have two mindsets in our company, like two hashtags, right? One hashtag is nothing to lose. And the other hashtag is no bad ideas and bold moves. So everything is allowed pretty much in 2020. And I think, as we're approaching 2021, I would almost say everything is allowed in 2021 too, as long as we're staying focused on the potential of the impact we can create. That's how we have to approach it, because otherwise you're getting spiraled down, right, on the uncertainty, what we just talked about.
That was fascinating too when you talked about the spirals, because it is literally, as you know, I'm in the financial services industry. We've connected on LinkedIn, and yeah. when you talk about the compounding effect of habits, whether it's with your money, your food, whatever it is, your mindset, you're absolutely right. Most people are going to talk about the ability to spiral up, but of course there's the other way to spiral down. And so it's really up to each of us to your point, support each other and hold each other accountable, and surround yourself with great people with great vision and like-minded abilities to make an impact. So that was a wonderful conversation. I'm really happy I got to meet you. Thank you so much for setting this up, Helen.
Yeah, thank you guys. Yeah, was great meeting you, and I hope you have a great week.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye. Cool, Helen. I'm glad that we got it. I know that Felix sent me an email about the link, and I thought, oh, it's all good. We'll figure it out.